The times are changing. As the world grows and evolves, the old is fizzled out in exchange for the new. Entertainment is no longer enjoyed within the confines of something that is physically in your possession or something that you have to actually get out of your home to watch. Physical media is dying, and the conventions of traditional media distribution are gradually becoming obsolete or outdated. This is the digital age, where everybody has a phone on them with 24/7 access to the internet, where convenience and ease of access is the norm for every website with a wide user base. Piracy was and is appealing to people because it's a nearly unlimited space that has everything you could ever want on demand. Movies, TV, music, games, etc. Ease of access all in one simple place, which each of these industries tried to shut down, but the lesson was learned that this format had promise. Cut to now and nearly every one of these industries has adapted one way or another. Game Pass and Spotify for the game and music industry respectively, and of course, all of the streaming services dedicated towards TV and movies. Netflix being widely considered the pioneer. No ads, lots of content, all in one easy to navigate user interface, and best of all, you didn't have to tune in one day every week at a specific time to catch the show you wanted to watch. Netflix originals released all episodes of a season in one day, changing the way TV was consumed. People didn't watch an episode of something a week, it was all in one place, allowing them to just binge through it as one complete narrative. When I look back at a lot of Netflix's programming, I don't think most of it would have hit the same if not for this format. Stranger Things was a mystery show where each episode built on the looming tension and intrigue from the last. After each episode wrapped up, you had to get to the next to try and answer all the questions you had floating around in your head. BoJack Horseman's entire season structure is based around the binge format. Episodes can stand on their own, but it's continuous. The plot progression of one episode leaks through to the next. Without dumping all the season's episodes in one day, a lot of the show's dramatic and comedic beats would just not translate. Addressing the obvious elephant in the room, Netflix has been falling on hard times recently, and many have been quick to blame the binge-watching business model for this dip in users. And to be fair, this is not without merit. Whilst the binge-watching model has a lot of strengths, I would be a rat-faced liar if I said it didn't have its shortcomings. One look at Google search analytics showed that episodic weekly format shows have a far more consistent and longer-lasting impact. When you have one episode a week, each week you have people talking about the new episode on social media, YouTube, and various other sites. When you have one season releasing all at once on one day, people will talk about it for a while, and then when the next week passes, the discourse will have subsided for the most part. So I understand the need or desire to disregard the standard Netflix established. The world is changing. Traditional television has the writing on the wall. Bearing in mind this is coming from a 19-year-old who has grown up with streaming and never really engaged much with traditional television, the old ways are done. There is no point in having these little boxes with ITV2 on them. They suck. And I feel nothing but pity for every wrinkly fuck sat in their home paying a fortune to watch something they could get for a fraction of the price on any of the countless streaming services out there.
Oh, you wrinkly, Shar-Pei-looking dimension-infested fuck!
As I said, many are quick to blame Netflix's release model for their recent hardships. However, I would personally pin it down to an oversaturation of the market. It's not just Netflix anymore. There's Hulu, Amazon Prime, Paramount+, Peacock, HBO Max, Apple TV, Crunchyroll, and Disney+. All with big franchise backing. Amazon Prime has The Boys, Invincible, and are sinking a fuck ton of money into some Lord of the Rings project. HBO Max is the home for all Warner Brothers properties, and a lot of their content ends up getting put on there, as well as housing popular shows like Euphoria. And Paramount+ has Halo. Show sucks, but people will watch it just because Master Chief will kamikaze a banshee into a spaceship one episode. Disney is perhaps the biggest company to ever grace the entertainment industry, owning some of the biggest franchises of all time with a seemingly infinite amount of funding. When Disney carved their mark on the wall of streaming services, they did so with an original that would attract a lot of users without question. And now Disney is making exclusive content on there directly tied in with the biggest film franchise of all time, promising quality TV on a scale only they could afford, in a format that lended itself to more creative and in-depth storytelling. WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, Hawkeye, and Moon Knight are all the shows on the service at the time of this video, and to be honest, I don't think any of them are particularly good. It's a big can of worms to open, and frankly, I'm not sure anyone really cares what I think of Loki or Hawkeye in a video like this. The reason I bring them up has to do with Disney's promise of doing stuff that plays with the format and the medium. Streaming presents unique opportunities creatively. A lot of the usual limitations that would be placed on traditional TV are non-existent within the format. There are far less limitations on what can or cannot be shown with varied demographics. And they can play with the format. There's a big divide between TV and movies storytelling wise. A TV show can afford to have a much slower pace, take its time with its characters and fleshing out its world in a way movies can't within their relatively short 2-hour runtime. Shows intended for binge watching are basically movies stretched out and expanded to around 8 episodes. It's easy to tell what's intended to be binged and what's not. Even though most people nowadays watch Breaking Bad binged, it's clearly not intended to be consumed in that way. A Stranger Things or a Squid Game is a continuous narrative with plot points from one episode naturally flowing into the next. A Breaking Bad, while utilizing cliffhangers and episodes that are not directly continuing the story of the last episode, are rarely not episodic. Basically, each episode can be self-contained. You'd be missing context, sure, but there would rarely not be a beginning, middle, or end within the isolated episode. These are both radically different shows, but comparing the pilots of both Breaking Bad and Squid Game, you can see how one was intended to be watched weekly and the other was intended to be watched with other episodes all at once. Breaking Bad introduces the character, his motivations, conflicts, and the inciting incident all within the first episode.
I'm 50 years old. I'm lame. I work jobs that I hate. No one respects me. I have cancer. Meth makes money. Wanna make meth, Jamessi?
Okay.
Yada yada yada, conflict resolution, the end. Squid Game basically does the same thing, introducing its character, the motivations, his conflict, and the inciting incident. The difference between these two is in their beginnings and ends. Breaking Bad begins in medias res and creates an "oh shit, what's gonna happen" intrigue, and at the end we catch up to where we began, and that whole thing is resolved. The story continues from there, but the plot of the episode comes full circle at the end. Squid Game begins with a flashback to something that doesn't come into play until the last episode and sets the tone and theme for the whole series. The episode ends with a twist that it's a death game and isn't resolved until the next episode. Breaking Bad's pilot is episodic and isolated, and Squid Game's is part of a much broader story. The point I'm trying to set up here is that streaming allows for people to experiment with storytelling in a way that wouldn't work in a traditional TV show. If Squid Game released the pilot as is and then waited a week until releasing episode 2, I doubt it would have been anywhere near as successful. Same goes for Invincible. First episode set things up well, but I had friends who were bored by the pilot until the twist at the end. So Amazon wisely released the first 3 episodes of the show all at once to compensate. Boomeranging back to my previous point, these Disney Plus Marvel shows are incredibly mismanaged. Marvel within a TV show format allows for stronger world building and character focus, which these Disney Plus shows definitely attempt to provide. But they're not really what you would stereotypically call a TV show, because they're not. They're Netflix miniseries, they're mini-movies. They're not episodic and they're not long. Each series consisting of 6 to 8 30 to 50 minute long episodes. For shit like this and what Marvel is trying to create with these shows, I hate the weekly format. What I hope I've been able to illustrate so far is that what shows should be binge watched and what shows should adhere to a weekly release schedule is on a case-by-case basis. I can see the argument being made that I only prefer binge watching because of impatience, that I don't want to wait a week and want it all at once. And sure, I guess, if you give me the option of having something be drawn out over the course of several weeks, or the straightforward option to just put a bullet in my head, I'd like to just get it over with there and then. However, I'm not arguing from a position of preference. I'm arguing that the MCU content Disney Plus is putting out is not conducive to a weekly model. Each of these episodes are part of a bigger story. When watched all at once, these MCU shows are movies stretched out across multiple installments. Finishing an episode of, say, Moon Knight, the show ends at an abrupt point of progression and we gotta wait a week until it's resolved. And then the episode afterwards barely has anything going on. The great thing about streaming and the one and done model is that since everything is meant to be one continuous narrative, you can afford to have an episode straying from the main plotline, or one where you want to experiment with structure without the audience feeling cheated. When waiting a week, expectations start to build, and packing shit into that 30 to 50 minute runtime means a lot in keeping an audience. It's pretty fucking ridiculous that in a series called Moon Knight, the fucker has only had 3 fights before being depowered after a half-baked conflict. If the show was all one continuous narrative, I doubt I'd have as big of a problem with its structure as I do now. The opening of the show sets up a vastly different conflict and tone that isn't nearly reflected in the rest of the series. The first episode set up a weird character study and mystery, but after a couple of episodes, the show just became Indiana Jones with DID. Which is fine, I guess, but a pilot matters when the show is weekly. Even in a binge format, it should set up the broad theme and characters you're going to be following. I'm using Moon Knight as the example here because it best represents my issue. The first episode has you believing the focus is one thing, when at the end you have the true setup of the show be revealed. That this timid gift shop worker is actually a magical superhero on the side, which he doesn't remember, and that spanner in the works makes me want to click next episode to see where it goes. Invincible built up a different expectation to have it be subverted, and so released its first 3 episodes in a binge format. Stranger Things didn't show its supernatural mystery twist fully until the end of the episode. Squid Game didn't show its hand until the ending, where the characters in the audience were taken off guard. Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad have been two shows I've been watching a lot lately if you couldn't already tell, and both of those feel like TV shows. The first episode didn't end with him quitting his job and approaching Jesse with the promise that all will be revealed next episode. That shit got condensed into one thing that makes you want to tune in next week. Releasing something weekly only works if your show actually suits it. The Mandalorian would be fucking horrible if it was a binge show, as each episode of the series plays on a different story setup. There's an overarching story, but broadly the show is a series of short stories in service to a greater narrative. But when bringing the biggest film franchise to streaming, there's so much more you can do with it to utilize the fact that you're on streaming and on TV. The only MCU show I'd say earned the weekly format and utilized it well was WandaVision, as the show played with the sitcom setup and used its first few episodes wisely to build intrigue and speculation each week. Of course, in the end it did blow up in that show's face in the last two episodes when it came to its ending, which again I put down to the writers scripting these shows like movies instead of like TV shows. A whole episode of an ending isn't satisfying when there's a week-long break separating the setup and the payoff. As with every new medium, it will go against the grain and usher in a new industry, until eventually the thing that stood out is distilled as it attempts to be seen as more legitimate. Streaming has advantages to mainstream media. The binge-watching model did so well for a reason, and I don't like the idea or standard of moving away from that for the sake of hopefully reining in more viewers and creating more discourse. I understand the reasoning for making an episode once a week, as it will expand the length of time the show is relevant for. At least, on paper. The Boys adopted a weekly model for its second season, and after the first 3 episodes dropped, the discourse and conversation about each new episode seemed to resign to conversations with friends or the occasional video breakdown. Most shows not driven by IP don't receive the attention they deserve until all episodes have released, when people can judge them as a full season. I know people who will intentionally not keep up with a show until it's over, at which point they can binge them at their earliest convenience. Things are different now. What worked for Netflix in the past is not going to work now in more ways than one. But the binge-watching model still has merit and use. For this very video, I rewatched Season 1 of Stranger Things. I started the first episode as a point of research for this video and ended up binging through the whole show in one sitting. Same went for Squid Game. If both of these shows didn't have that structure to revolve their stories around, I doubt they would be where they are today. So yeah, that's the end of the video. A little short, a little anticlimactic, maybe, but life moves on, and I've mostly said everything I want to say. Getting the obvious out there, subscribe, comment your thoughts on the subject. Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I'm correct? The choice is yours, I leave it in your hands. Do you prefer binged or weekly? I want to know, tell me in the comments, please, please, I'm begging. Very special thank you to the people who watched my Book of Boba video. I really wasn't expecting it to get anywhere near the amount of attention it's getting now, so to see it actually exceed my expectations like it has, and to see as many of you commenting as there are, I'm really appreciative of it. This video right here was meant to be more of like a little experiment, but rest assured, if you like more long form stuff, I do have something in the pipeline, and yeah, please stay tuned for that. That's all for now. Bye.